Hello, welcome back to my channel and welcome to another installment of I Tried Writing Like, the series where I attempt to replicate the routines of famous authors. This time up, George Orwell, or should I say Eric Arthur Blair, because I actually didn't know that George Orwell was a pen name, and he picked Orwell because he loved the River Orwell in Suffolk, which I thought was quite neat. I will be honest, this was inspired because it feels like the world is burning, and more I'm finding a kind of strange, twisted comfort in the dystopian and social commentary of Orwell's most famous works. Namely, who controls the past controls the future, who controls the present controls the past. And all animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others. The New York Times said that the term Orwellian, used to describe totalitarian and authoritarian situations and ideas similar to George Orwell's 1984, is the most widely used adjective derived from the name of a modern writer. Off the top of my head, there is Big Brother, Thought Police, Newspeak, Doublethink, Thought Crime, and a lot more. And although he's better known for his fiction works, George Orwell did actually write a lot of nonfiction as well. The Economist claims he was perhaps, which is pulling a lot of work here, but perhaps the 20th century's best chronicler of English culture. He wrote an entire essay in 1946 called A Nice Cup of Tea, about how to make the perfect cuppa, for instance. George Orwell published 3 nonfiction books, countless articles, essays, things like that. Some he was commissioned for, some just that he was wanting to write, and 6 novels, Animal Farm in 1984 being the last of his 2 works published before his death. One of the things that I enjoy most about George Orwell's writing is that it is high concept, but sort of like perfect, precise, easy to understand prose. I hesitate to say it's easy reading here because there are so many layers within the words, but the words are chosen specifically for the greatest understanding, and that is one of Orwell's key writing tenets. In fact, as he shared in his essay, Politics in the English Language, there are 6 questions that writers should ask themselves as they're working. And you can find the entire essay on the Orwell Foundation website. I'm still scrolling because it's quite long. The 6 questions are, what am I trying to say? What words will express it? What image or idiom will make it clearer? And is this image fresh enough to have an effect? And then additionally, he might ask, could I put it more shortly? Or have I said anything that is avoidably ugly? Which I love. I write avoidably ugly things in the first draft all the time. He also has 6 rules. So questions, rules, yes. He believes that the following rules will cover most cases. 1. Never use a metaphor, simile, or other figure of speech which you are used to seeing in print. 2. Never use a long word where a short one will do. 3. If it is possible to cut a word out, always cut it out. 4. Never use the passive voice when you can use the active. 5. Never use a foreign phrase, a scientific word, or a jargon word if you can think of an everyday English equivalent. And 6. Break any of these rules sooner than saying anything outright barbarous. Also, for the record, the Orwell Foundation does have writing prizes, which is really cool, and also some youth prizes for people that are in the UK, so I will link those down below, check them out. But I would really like to pull attention to the main quote at the top of the website of the foundation, which is from Orwell. It says, "What I have most wanted to do is to make political writing into an art," and I think he succeeded in that. So okay, we have the rules. We have the questions to ask ourselves as we're writing. The question now is, how will I be working? What was George Orwell's writing routine? He did have a lot of different jobs. He was a policeman, a teacher, and he wrote in the midst of all that, and then transitioned into a part-time job at a bookstore so that he would have more time to write while still bringing in money. And then eventually, of course, he did writing more full-time. But we're going to talk about the part-time job. The part-time assistant job at the secondhand shop gave him a lot of time to write. He would open the shop at 8:45 and like get the shop ready until about 10. And then he would have free time to write from 10 to about 2, which he said was perfect for him because he said he was the most mentally alert in like the late morning, early afternoon hours. This was really ideal for him. Surrounded by books. And then after 2, he would return to work at the actual bookstore from about 2 to 6. I think in honor of that, I'm going to spend most of my time writing at a bookstore from 10 to 2. I think there's something just so inspiring by that. I am constantly surrounded by books, but I think there will be something different about being around other people who are either like reading or writing and just like the kind of hum of the noise of a bookstore oof. I am gonna try and work away from home in the mornings, kind of like he did, and then we'll see what happens in the afternoon. I might have to return back. But I do want to mention real quick that I attempted to film this experiment once before, but unfortunately got sick. In a, not quite a twist of fate, but in like a, not ironic, but like in a little bit of a twist. George Orwell also spent most of his time writing 1984 in bed. He was sick and in kind of his health decline. In a very fancy looking Scottish home, but mostly in bed, and he did pass away not long after the publication in 1984. So in some ways, as someone who is often having to work from the bed or is ill in some capacity, it does make me feel a little bit better that when I was attempting this experiment, I could at least remind myself that I was still doing it even when I was working from the bed. I was still kind of writing like George Orwell. But with all that said, I will see you tomorrow for a full day of trying to write like George Orwell. Oh, it is perfect writing weather today. I'm very excited. So I am just about packed up. I have my bag from Thailand. I'm going to stop by the post office later because I need to change PO boxes. So I think that'll be my afternoon work activity alongside meeting up with Becca to talk over our screenplay that we're working on. So all very exciting things. I am wondering, since I do not work at this bookstore, how early is too early to show up to it, because I'm thinking of doing like a coffee shop beforehand for my 8:30 to 10 time, but then from 10 to 2, like they open at 10. All the bookstores in my city open at 10. And the one I'm going to is my favorite independent bookstore in town. Is it weird for me to get there right at 10? I never know. It feels weird, so I think I'm gonna try and time it just a little bit. Let's go ahead and head to the coffee shop. All right, I'm a little bit early, but I figure that just means a little bit more work time to put in. It is the start of the week, so off the top of my head, I know I want to make a thumbnail for 5K Friday. I know I need to just get organized for the week. I have some emails to send, just like really basic stuff. Monday's gonna Monday, you know? Oh, you can't see the goats anymore, but oh my god, they were so cute! Hold on, let's see. Aww. Although it's raining on them. Okay, it's about 10:10 now, so... Oh, 10:13, so I'm gonna wait, like, a few more minutes. Thankfully, the rain has kind of stopped. Just enough time for me to dash into the bookstore. What I'm really going to be focusing on today is I do want to try and write a little bit in a basement brimming with bodies. So I will be drafting, in which case I can ask myself, what am I trying to say and what words will express it? And is there an image that can make that clearer? Is there an idiom? Is there a metaphor? And also, it seems like a real sticking point was the metaphors that are just for naught. Either kind of just nothing done before. I don't want to use the same old expressions like that one, same old. Is this image fresh enough to have an effect? And since my world is cozy fantasy, I really want it to be immersive enough. I want the words to be fresh enough to make you feel like you've fallen into this story. That said, I think I will alternate by going back to a closet full of cauldrons because I have my beta feedback, I've corralled it, and I'm really just trying to figure out I might be rereading it so that I can figure out the perfect place. I have a scene in mind. I have a couple places in mind for it, but because I have made some additions to the last draft, I need to refresh my memory and I need to figure out where things can go. So as I'm reading through, is there anything that's in passive voice that I can make more active? Can I make those metaphors or similes pop more? You know, these little things. That's where we're at in A Closet Full of Cauldrons, so that's very exciting. I did also bring my notebook in case I need to jot anything down. Sometimes for cases like this, especially for brainstorming, which is what I will be doing to figure out where that new scene should go, it's easier for me to do that by hand first. So we'll see, maybe even playing around with some similes and metaphors will be easier by hand. Maybe there's not quite as much judgment by hand for me initially as there is by seeing it on the screen. All right, I don't need these, but they will hold my hair up. Always have to get it out of the way when I'm working. It's 10:18. I think now is an okay time. Let's go. I always love grabbing the Indie Next to see what's going on in the book selling world. This apparently is like the utmost cozy, and to be fair, this one looks utmost cozy too. I figured in honor of secondhand shops, I actually want to try and go to another bookstore and get a copy of both 1984 and Animal Farm on my way back so I can get home in time for my meeting with Becca. 22 minutes. Let's go. Oh, I should say, I actually did manage to come up with like a metaphor that I really enjoyed. I don't think it's the first time anyone's ever used the metaphor for an idea steeping like tea, but I liked the way I described it, and I did work at it a little bit in order to follow the 6 recommended rules, to ask myself, like, can I get rid of any of these words? Would any other word choice be better, stronger? It was fun, it was fun. Even though it was working on my first draft stuff, I'm glad that I took the time to do that. I think it's just gonna make me feel better when I go back to revise this at the next draft, to be like, ah, yes. You know, you just need these little moments where you're like, ah, I hit that, I nailed that this time. Something to look forward to when you're gutting your project. Ooh. Perfect timing. We just ended our discussion at 4:30. I have a precious baby Vin who has joined me. I'm going to take a quick eye break and then it is back to work. I will say, it has been a screen heavy day, so I might stretch the meaning of work here soon. We might be doing some housework, yard work, work, puppy play work. That's a thing. It's a thing. It is perhaps no surprise that I ended up being a huge fan of George Orwell's routine. It just kind of naturally falls into what would work for me compared to, say, someone like Brandon Sanderson, who's more of a night owl, or was when I did my version of this experiment. This was just lovely. I think being surrounded by books is so beautiful. I feel like it helps to make me feel like one day the words I'm putting onto my computer screen will eventually be bound in book form and on the shelves. Like, it's so inspirational in that way. And I did enjoy having kind of blocks of different work. I will say that the 4-hour stretch felt pretty long actually for the dedicated work that I was doing, but I think I could train myself to get up to 4 hours. I think normally I tend to do it in like a max of like a 2.5-hour burst. So I think towards the tail end, the last hour and a half at the bookshop when I was writing, I was like, the words were becoming a little bit blurrier in that way that it was hard to make them as purposeful as I wanted them to be, as they should be if I was following George Orwell's 6 rules, right? And the questions that I should ask myself. I did want to bring up one final point about George Orwell believing that all writers write for 4 main motivations. He published this in his essay, Why I Write, and I thought it was really interesting. So he thinks the 4 motivations, mostly for prose writers, are sheer egoism, aesthetic enthusiasm, like your love of the words kind of thing, historical impulse, kind of like a documentation, and political purpose as like a means of speaking up. This is fascinating to me. He obviously meant putting aside like trying to earn a living and the need to do that. And maybe this could be reflected in the kind of political purpose. If you think that more broadly, I think a lot of writers I know were writing to make sense of things. And sometimes that is a very personal thing, but sometimes it is more of a grand scale sort of thing. I think also just the love of stories, and maybe that goes into the aesthetic nature of it, and the joy of having the words and using the words precisely to get across your meaning. But I think there is an element of writing for me that is simply trying to get the stories out of my head. They take up so much space, so it is lovely to get to put them down on a page and really make them what I want them to be. And the only way I can fully, truly realize that is by putting them on the page. So I guess I'm just kind of curious, what do you think of George Orwell's 4 great motivations, and do you agree with them? Or would you switch some things around? Do you think maybe there's only 2 great motivations? Or for yourself, is there one main motivation? I would love to know. And finally, in kind of like a meta discussion of these I Tried Writing Like videos, I feel like I have been burned in a lot of ways. I feel like I've done this where I've picked authors, and George Orwell is no different. He lived at a very specific time that was before our current time, and as great and wonderful as I find his political commentary, it's also been proven that he was like a bit of a womanizer, and also like fully against gay people. And so it's difficult when I do these kind of things, and I've taken some down, I've kept some up of authors that have done bad things, and it feels very akin to the characters that we write. You know, they're not all good, and they have serious flaws, some more serious than others, and I think the ones I've taken down, and maybe I should go through this again, but the ones I've taken down are because they're actively still speaking out and talking in a way that is hurting communities. And so in some ways it's easier to do people who've already passed away. But I would like to do more of these, and I hope this is the start of getting to do more of them, because I always find them so fun. I love digging into these authors that I didn't know that much about other than having read their work. And it is interesting to see and to sort of compare this idea I have of the person through their work, and then historically who they are perhaps known to be, and how that neither of those things, and even combined, tells the whole truth of them, I'm sure. But it's just also fascinating. So if you do have someone that you would like me to try writing like next, I would absolutely love to know. Please do comment down below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you very soon with a new one. Bye!